Hello, welcome back. This is your lead instructor, General Washington, CEO of Quitech Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about data protection and privacy under the Information Security and Data Protection module, brought to you by ACSMI. Let's get started, shall we? So, data protection and privacy, again, these are one of the critical components of cyber. Why is that? Because every threat actor is usually after some form of sensitive information. Now, this is usually disclosed due to breaches or misuse of configuration, like actually keeping default credentials on a server that's client-facing or web-facing, I should say, or even unauthorized access. Now, with the increasing reliance on these digital systems, it's even more important to ensure that we're safeguarding these systems as much as we possibly can. Confidentiality is at its best one of the most important ones because it's all about making sure that that person cannot gain access at all. Whether we're talking about personal data or even just organizational trade secrets, we have to understand how to implement these privacy measures. Why? Well, because if we're not implementing, if we're not being proactive, then that means we're losing. The threat actor, the nation states, the activists, they don't really stop. They work around the clock. Okay, so when we're sleeping, they're working. So we have to do all we can to maintain trust and to prevent these data breaches from happening. So data exists in a lot of different states. We have public data, which is access to everybody. Okay, confidential data. This is only limited to specific employees. Think of like customer records. You don't want customer records out on a public server. And then you have your restricted data. Now this is proprietary information, trade secrets even. The lesser the data, like the classification or the sensitivity, it's not as important. But the higher the sensitivity of the actual data itself, the more important it is. We have to learn how to classify different data sets because this helps organizations apply the correct security measures, right? Because if you fail to do that, if you fail to account for the certain data at hand, that's going to, honestly, it's going to involve a lot of data breaches and a lot of fines and reputations being crippled because that data was stolen. So we have to understand the sensitivity of the actual data itself and how we go about protecting this too. And understanding, where it lies on the level of sensitivity. Let's talk about encryption. Now you have symmetric and asymmetric. I talked about last time where we're going to get a little bit more into this, and this is now. Now, encryption, it comes in different standards, but just know that if you're looking at symmetric encryption, now this uses the same key for encryption and decryption. It's simple, but it's a lot riskier because if that key itself is somehow, some way stolen or compromised, then that's an issue. Whereas asymmetric encryption, this is going to employ public and private key pairs. So you're going to have two different ones. You're going to have a public key and a private key. We talked about digital signatures, and this is kind of hinting towards that. But this allows us for secure communications, especially if you're using email. You can attach that digital signature to the sender, or if you're sending that email. Now repudiation, right? You can't deny that you didn't send it if you have your digital signature, if you sign that email. So encryption is fundamental to protecting the data because it makes it unreadable. Think about plain text versus ciphertext. When you add in the algorithm, now you have ciphertext. Now you have encrypted that data. Now it's not readable by humans. So having a robust IAM system in place, this is going to ensure that only authorized individuals have access to it, right? We want to make sure that if we're using anything identity and access management, well, we have to understand that we need to restrict certain processes or certain tools or certain files based on the role, based on just-in-time permissions, based on multi-factor authentication. We don't want anyone just accessing all the data. We want to have complete access controls. Like our chart here at the bottom, it talks about how a system access control, if we're looking at IAM, you have multi-factor authentication, just in time where we're looking at temporary access is needed, you're only giving this contractor or this person a slot amount of time to access the system, and that's it. Where you're talking about granular access control, this is minimizing the insider threat because you're getting really, really, really granular on how much control this person may or may not have. Our example here talks about how there's an employee within the payroll system, right? They can view the salary records read-only, right? We're not giving them the right, okay? We're not giving them the modify type of attribute, but they can only read or modify data based upon defined rules. Now, this is granular control because it's going to minimize the risk of an insider threat. Because if you give that payroll person all the keys to the kingdom, give them all the access, read, write, and execute, that's bad. And that is a high risk of a insider threat. Now, regulatory compliance, this just follows back on what we talked about. I love bringing this in because we always have to remember we're going to be compliant against something. We have to make sure that data protection, like we've been talking about, it meets the industry standards, which is going to reduce the legal, reputational risk as in a data breach may occur. But if we have these things in place, if we have our countermeasures in place and we're adhering to privacy laws, we're a little bit easier going than someone that's not. It won't be as hard if a data breach occurs if you already have something in place. I'm not saying that it won't happen. It's always kind of necessarily like not an if, but more so a when. So I can't say that it will never happen. It may happen, but at least you have something in place. You have your breach notifications in place. You have a way to contain in place. And we'll talk about IRPs here shortly. Now, understanding, why would you need a backup? Why do you need to recover from disaster? Why do you need cold sites and warm sites and all these other things to ensure that, you can keep going a lot faster? Well, think about it like this. If you're putting into place a strategy like redundancy, if you're using like RAID array, for instance, you're having a redundant array of disk, you're adding on the redundant aspect, so you're having multiple disks. If one fails, you can roll over to the other one. Or just add on that data that was missing. But regularly scheduled backups are going to ensure that data recovery can actually happen in case of ransomware. But now, like we talked about before, it's a double whammy where now they're going after backups. So you got to be extra careful. You have to. Because now they're not just targeting the actual data. Now they're going to look at backups. Where are you storing your backups? Oh, I found your backups. Now I'm going to compromise your backups. Then what can you do then? So you have to be thinking in terms of like what an attacker would do. Because now it's evolving more. So more organizations are going to employ this 3-2-1 rule for backups, where they're going to have 3 copies of data, 2 media types, and then 1 copy off-site. We're trying to think ahead here. And then also understanding that, we have to analyze and, the understanding of like how a user operates and also how a perceived user or an actual threat or worm or Trojan would operate. It's always going to give us some telltale sign of an anomaly that we can look into. Data masking and tokenization. So look at it like this. If you're masking data, think about you have a credit card, right? And all you see is X's and then the last 4. That's masking. Whereas you're using tokenization. Now it takes it a step further because it's going to replace that sensitive data with cryptographic tokens. Okay? So you can't necessarily understand what it is. It's going to take it a step further. Now you can have a token vault, and you can go and access that data if you need to. Comprehensive risk assessments. So this is understanding threats and vulnerabilities and the risk and the likelihood about it. We talked about quantitative versus qualitative. So be sure to kind of review your notes to understand the differences between the two. But overall, it's all about performing a risk assessment. We're trying to align the findings with our incident response playbooks, IRP. Now, the role of an IRP. When a breach occurs, we have certain set of standards, playbooks, if you will, that we're going to take. Certain steps that we're going to take in order to contain, in order to reach out to certain people, in order to make sure that that vulnerable system is isolated, contained, and then we notify the relevant authorities. Similar to like the role of cloud security. When we're migrating data to the cloud, we want to make sure that protection measures are in place, that we have encryption for data at rest and data in transit. Data at rest is basically saying, hey, data that's on the actual hard drive itself, we want to make sure that it's encrypted. Data in transit that's moving from one place to another, we want to make sure that is encrypted. A real world example of this, think about our e-commerce platform. Right, so e-commerce platforms, they're going to collect payment information, making PCI DSS compliant essential for safeguarding credit card data. Now, data encryption and rigorous authentication mechanisms, they're going to build on customer trust. They're going to thwart breaches. Why wouldn't it, right? So an e-commerce profile, or at least a platform that's adhering to what PCI DSS has to say about safeguarding data by using tokenization, which is going to replace, like we talked about, sensitive card data with cryptographic tokens. This is going to prevent the exploitation of the database if it's compromised, because all the attacker really want to do is find these POC, find the POS data system, find where they're holding this credit card data and extract that data and send it to the dark web and sell it on the dark web. But if you have tokenization in place, you're a little step ahead because it's going to prevent that exploitation. If you have multi-factor authentication involved, or at least enabled, you can enhance an account security by making sure that that person does a one-time password or facial recognition to ensure that, well, they can actually get into it. Because think about it, if you're just using your username and password and that's it, that's all you need to get in, it's not going to really get you anywhere, especially if that account is compromised. Again, this has been great. This is Gennaro Washington here, CEO of Cortex Solutions. It's your lead instructor, and we talked about the aspect of understanding data protection and ensuring that when we do look at implementing IAM or some type of systems in place, that we're doing it in a way that's structured. It's been fun. Again, brought to you by ACSMI. I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.